Great films get me excited. They just get me worked up. They make me so happy to be alive. And one of those films, it's a bleak film. So this might seem weird that I'm excited to talk about it. But one of those films is one I recently watched from 1985, Agnes Varda's Vagabond. This is a tremendous work of cinema. It's one of my favorite films I've seen ever. This will probably make my top 100 at some point, or at least be in my top 200 kind of films. This is something that actually, when I watched it and as I was watching it and thinking about the other films of this director I'd seen, I have a regret. I have not picked up, all these years I have the Fellini box set, I have the Bergman, all these things. I have not picked up the Varda box set, and that actually might be what I do. In the Barnes & Noble sale, of course, I'd have to order it, but, you know, maybe pick it up in stores. But Vagabond, okay, what a tremendous picture. Okay, it's a bleak film, like I said. Mona, this character Mona, in the very beginning, just almost immediately, we find out that she's dead in a ditch. And so a lot of the film is flashbacks about what might have happened. The narration, it's not clear how much you can trust all of it, which I like, but you get a general sense of this girl's life. There are these anecdotes, these stories from people who have encountered her, allegedly encountered her, and sometimes they'll sort of look at the screen and do this sort of documentary thing. It's a really interesting blending and style that works in this film. If that had been overdone, it may not have, but this is a master director knowing how to blend those elements and how to work her craft, and so it's really perfectly done. A film director, a person who kept coming to my mind as I was watching this was Robert Bresson, another great French director, one of my very favorites, and specifically a few films, but specifically Milchette, okay? So this is worth bringing up here whenever we're talking about Vagabond. And this is about a young woman with a dying mother, an alcoholic father, and a baby brother, a teenager who seeks solace in the countryside. And this is another bleak kind of film along these lines. It's one of my very favorite films, a great Bresson film. And this film has that sort of simple poetic imagery and those things you might associate. But, you know, it's not non-professional actors or something you might see with Bresson, but the story is so engaging. Each encounter that she has on the road feels authentic and lived and real. She has a simple tent that she has to set up that doesn't always work the best in the elements. She is practically stealing from one location to another. She forces herself upon people. She forces her companionship. Here is a person who is dirty, gross. The characters talk about it. There's nothing romantic about this. It's almost Italian neorealism. It kind of come to life here in the French film world here. There's no pretending in this film. This is an honest, brutal depiction. There's an especially really good scene in here. It's kind of a few scenes, but let's just say that she interacts with an old woman. And and there's a whole frame where there's a character, you know, you see a character talking and you see the old woman kind of in the left of the frame, almost like forgotten. I can't remember if that shot was out of focus, but like little subtle camera tricks and things that, you know, the director puts throughout or uses throughout. And again, this is a director who really understands composition, and so that helps tell the story. But, you know, she gets drunk at one point, Mona does, with this older woman, and their conversation is frank, and it reveals a lot about how both characters have basically been cast aside by society, yet they choose to live on, and they choose to get everything they can out of the day. There's another great line where someone asks Mona, you know, why are you doing this, basically? Why do you live as a vagabond from one place to another? And she said, you know, or I think she even says, like, why not have a job or something along those lines? And she said, well, then I wouldn't be able to have champagne with a sandwich or with bread, you know, in a car here. I'm paraphrasing, but there's this sense that this young woman knows that life is the here and the now, and that it never really gets better. It's what you make out of the day. Now that is not, it's not one of those themes that's sort of shoved in your face. It's a quiet observation that the film seems to make, that there's a real reason why this young woman's like this. We learn reasons why she's on the road, why she's living practically homeless. And the more we see, the more some of it kind of makes sense as to why she would live this way. The people who have, in this film, structured lives, routine lives, or anything resembling a corporate life, they don't seem to have it that great either. And then there are people who have made compromises. Maybe they live out, you know, in the country somewhere, and they've tried to create their own kind of homestead, and that even isn't quite the same as just being on the road and living life, as it were. One of the things that's so impressive about this film to me is how Varda can make a character in a situation like this that's consistently dirty and grimy kind of look pretty and freeing. And again, despite a lot of terrible things that happen, it can really give you a lot of courage and hope as a person watching it. And I don't know if anybody else would have that interpretation other than me. I understand the bleakness, and yeah, we start out seeing her dead, but there's something about her life that I think is worth celebrating. This isn't a film to me that I watched and I felt completely miserable the whole time. There are plenty of, like, there are some rough moments in here, okay? She goes through some awful, awful things. And I'm not downplaying those. What I'm saying is that this is someone who lived her life by her own rules, by her own code, and made the most out of it. And I think that's worth celebrating. She made mistakes aplenty. She does plenty of dumb stuff. She gets drunk in public and does all this ridiculous stuff. But there's something about someone who has this level of self-conviction that I find to be inspiring. And the film really hits me as someone who is watching the entire world kind of, or at least what I like to think of as the entire world, kind of trying to go back to this idea that, you know, women go to the kitchen and have the trad wife family fantasy kind of thing. I think that a film like this is as timely and relevant as ever. It forces us to think about the decisions we're making on a daily basis. Everybody, and this is, you know, this is what's so universal about this film. Everybody at some point looks at their life, and no matter how comfortable, no matter how nice of a house they have, no matter how many cars, you know, whatever they have, no matter their bank account, everybody at some point looks at their life, their day in, day out, and they say, what would it be like if all of this structure were just gone? What would it be like to just be out there living life on a grand adventure? And this film really, I think, nails it, for better and for worse. Now, there are some really pleasant moments in this film that maybe other characters disrupt a good flow of events that's happening, or a good timeline for Mona. And you get the sense that she's just one good break away. You know, that's part of it. You're like, man, if just one part of this relationship with this person, with this character could happen, maybe things could go in a positive direction. But at the same time, how long could Mona realistically stay in one place, even if everything worked out for her? It's always fascinating, kind of wondering how much of her life, you know, is there a self-inflicted chaos? And some people might watch this and say, she deserves what happens to her. She deserves to be dead, even though we know that's happening in the beginning. But the more you watch, the more you're fascinated with how this life unfolds in this way, and how the determinism of the film. It is deterministic, you know, but it's so strange that I'm talking about this film in such a hopeful way for how deterministic it is. But I think that's the great beauty of Varda's work. Every time I watch it, it feels as if this is a director who cut through all the pieces of the apple, you know, and got right to the core. And I've just noticed that with her work now. I think this is maybe the fourth or fifth I've watched from this director, but I was so excited to watch it. I know it was a big film from the 80s, and it had been on my watch list for a while, but it stirred something inside of me. It made me hopeful, despite how bleak it is. And the reason it made me hopeful is it made me believe that I can take my life into my own hands. And no matter how the cards fall, at least I tried. And that's what I can say for this character. Yeah, it didn't work out. Yeah, she ends up, she's one or two lucky breaks away, in my opinion, like I said. But I like that she refused to have a boss to tell her what to do. There's something about her that I find courageous and heroic, and I appreciate this character. She's foolish, she's young, she's stubborn. She makes a lot of mistakes, but I admire the character. Now, I always say in these kind of videos, especially one where I think I probably have a pretty unique reaction to this, I can only tell you how I reacted to the film, okay? I can only tell you my reaction. I would imagine not everyone has the same reaction as I do. on that note, I think this is a strong film for, that presents cases for women's rights across a variety of topics, right? And I won't talk about those specifically here because it's going to start giving away plot points. But people deserve to live and be happy. Like, that's part of the underlying film or theme of this film, among many. So anyway, if you like the conversation today and you like stuff like the Criterion Collection foreign films, do me a favor, click that thumbs up button and subscribe to Cody in the Cinema.